This is Impact with Don Wenner.
Hey everyone, Don Wenner here, founder and CEO of DLP Capital and host of the Impact Podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Eric Maddox, on the show. Eric is an American public speaker, author, and former special operations soldier. He was attached to a Delta Force special operations team of the Joint Special Operations Command, responsible for tracking down the most wanted men in Iraq. During his 6-month tour with the Delta Force team, Eric conducted over 300 interrogations and collected intelligence which directly led to the capture of Saddam Hussein. Eric is a business consultant who teaches business leaders how to win trust through empathy-based listening. 3 things that listeners will take away are, number 1, why we all struggle so much to listen and in turn build real relationships. Number 2, how empathy-based listening led to the capture of Saddam Hussein. And number 3, the keys to successful negotiation. So, hey, Eric, so excited to have you on the show here today. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Don.
Well, can't wait to dig in here. You got quite a incredible background, as listeners just heard a little bit about. And we're going to get into, I know, some areas of sweet spot for you, and some areas you have some deep expertise. And, we're here at DLP. We say our secret weapon to our success over the years has been what we call the 20-mile march. And this is a concept, that we've taken from the great Jim Collins. And, Jim Collins tells the story of the 20-mile march of 2 expedition crews that set out to get to the South Pole. Nobody had ever been to the South Pole before. And they were Robert Falcon Scott and Amundsen were the 2 expedition crews. And one crew got to the South Pole first by 31 days. And when the other crew achieved their trip to the South Pole 31 days later, they actually ran out of food on the way back and died. So not only did they not get the glory of this expedition victory, but they actually all perished and died. And in the study he does over 4 years of trying to understand what great businesses have in common, he's determined that this mindset of marching 20 miles every day is the key to long-term success in businesses and in teams. And that's what the expedition crew who won did. Every day they marched 20 miles. Didn't matter if it was good weather or bad weather. Didn't matter if there's heavy winds or the wind was at their back. They kept that discipline. They didn't let the outside world dictate what they did each and every day. And it's a great message, and it's a great approach to consistent discipline that we work hard to embody here at DLP. And in your amazing time of serving our country, and thank you for that. You've led some amazing missions, and I just want to ask you, how have you been able to keep your teams on track? And I know some really trying times.
So great question, Don. And when you think of that philosophy, I think what's most intriguing is it's not that it's 20 miles a day, right? We don't know if that's a lot, or it sounds like a lot to me, especially going to the North Pole. What I think is interesting is that variable, regardless of the circumstances, right? Regardless of the circumstances. And I know for the missions that I have been on, the ones that were really most challenging, tracking down Saddam, right? We had a mission, but when you go into a battlefield, we don't know what those circumstances are. And when we went into this particular battlefield, the circumstances were, the interrogation techniques that you were trained on, they don't work because we've never fought a war like this before, because there's no uniform, there's no battlefield. These are civilians, and we don't know who the enemy are. So what I thought was most challenging was saying, yes, what is our mission? Don't get away from that mission. And most importantly, it's not what the circumstances are, but how do we use those circumstances actually in our favor, right? So, for instance, the biggest problem that they had using the old Army techniques of interrogation were that these prisoners could come in without a uniform and say, I'm completely innocent. And it was this plausible deniability that really crushed our old techniques of saying, we know everything about you. You better do what we say if you want any help. Because the civilian clothes that they all were wearing and the lack of information created hope. So it says, wait a second, Let's not fight against that circumstance. Let's use that hope, because hope's very powerful. And let's take that circumstance to our advantage, because then we can empower these prisoners and we can actually get more information because they're so close. They feel like they're going to get out of there. They truly can leave because they're not an enemy. They're not in the uniform. They're not actually a soldier in the enemy military. So I love the idea that regardless of the circumstances, we're going to continue this consistent march. But I also like the idea of, wait a second, can we use those circumstances actually to our advantage?
I like that. So we're here. This season is all about helping impact this jobs crisis and helping entrepreneurial businesses, which I believe small businesses are the center of our ability to create new jobs in this country. And as small businesses are trying to grow, and they feel the struggle that they can't find or close enough clients. They're out looking for more business. They're trying to find deals to buy. They're trying to raise capital. They're in this search for clients, capital, partners, et cetera. And yet, you and in your military service, you went and tracked down and found, Saddam Hussein that many thought was impossible. On a personal note, I know you tracked down a pretty interesting story. Your biological mother, I think it turned out, thought it was going to be a big deal. You did it in 8 hours. And so I'm just curious, as companies are out there struggling, feeling desperately they can't find or get enough of what they need, what are the keys that you found to being able to go out there and find, track down whatever it is that you or your team is looking for?
This is going to sound really simple, Don, and it's not. For me, it's all about listening. And when you talk about tracking down my biological mother, I knew the day I was born, and I knew the city that I was born. So my strategy was, I'm going to go to that city and see if I can find her. I actually went to the library. At that moment, I don't know what to do. But what I did do is hit up the local librarian. She kind of talked to me about the format, the way that the phone books worked back then. You actually got more information in a phone book back in 1972 than you did, even recently when they used to have phone books that people actually used. And then I started to learn, she explained what she knew about the hospitals and hospital records and those sort of things. So for me, yes, we want to have a plan, right? We want to have a goal. We want to stick to that plan. But when we say, I'm looking, I'm searching, I'm discovering, your best asset are the natives, the people on the ground. When I go find Saddam Hussein, all I knew was supposedly he might be in Iraq, and I was in this town, his hometown of Tikrit. That was my strat. That's what I was working with. But when you start talking to people, again, circumstances, said I couldn't go and talk to all the people in the city. It's too dangerous. I could only talk to the prisoners. I did not know what I was looking for, but I told myself they know more than I do. So let's listen to them. What am I listening for? I got to put my biases, my goals, my agenda, my suspicions behind me to listen to them. And they guided me. They didn't know they were guiding me at some point. Sometimes they really did. But for me, when we're trying to discover, what are we always trying to do? At the end of the day, our business is in some way serving people. So if we're an entrepreneur and we have this great idea, I would say, are you sure you know exactly how you're serving people? The best way to find out is to ask them and then listen to what they tell you.
Awesome. I love that. I love that you said, go where you're likely to find them, or go where they're located, right? So if you're running a business and you're looking for more doctors, right? Go where doctors are, right? Go to where they're located, where you're likely to find the person or type of people you're looking for. And, if you're trying to get in touch with, successful people, and going and talking to their, receptionists and listening and finding out what the needs are and how they can connect you to the right person in the organization. That's pretty powerful, pretty many applications to what you just said there. So, you said that empathy-based listening is the key there. So, and I know you've said, it's the number one way to gain trust and maximize influence. So talk to us. What is empathy-based listening? Maybe start with what is empathy and what is empathy-based listening? What do you mean by that?
So empathy-based listening, that is the communication technique that instead of standard communication, which everyone has on a daily basis, where we talk to someone in order to influence them of our ideas, our thoughts, our goals, our agendas, and we talk to them based on our biases of the situation, maybe of them, or we listen to them simply to gather accurate information to help ourselves make better decisions. That's why people typically communicate. Empathy-based listening says, I'm going to communicate for the primary objective to seek to understand the perspective of the individual with regards to that topic of conversation at that moment in time. Why? Because I learned on the battlefield, trying to track down Saddam, that I could not achieve any goal unless I could gain the full empowerment of the individuals that I was working with. That empowerment came from them trusting me. And what I discovered was that the ultimate level of trust with anybody that we communicate with, that we interact with, especially if there's a partnership where we're sharing or relying on each other with shared resources for a higher value, is they want to know, are you having this conversation? Are you having this partnership for me first or for yourself first? And empathy-based listening says we're going to create a culture in which we communicate to seek to understand for everyone that we work with, for them first. Why? Because we're going to achieve more if we serve, gain a level of trust and commitment that says, now that they trust me, they will give full empower. I will empower them to get all their resources on this mutual project. Now, this isn't a trick. It's not like, oh, I gain that trust, and then I take the resources. No, it says, wait a second. As a servant leader on this team, my goal is to empower to get the most out of everyone involved. That comes from giving them the trust that you as the leader or you as the teammate, we are going to make it about them first. That's what empathy-based. Now, empathy-based listening is the process in which we do that, because listening is hard. Most of us are selfish and self-centered. We go into conversations with our goals, objectives. We have all these distractions. We don't really know what to listen for. So empathy-based listening is the process to which we build that culture to empower, to strengthen a team.
I love it. So you did, I think I read 2,700 interrogations. Is that correct?
Over my entire career, I've done 2,700 interrogations. Correct.
Wow. So when you started off and you did that very first interrogation, I assume you weren't following this empathy-based listening approach. So how did you develop this, and how were you originally trained, and how did it come to be? How did you learn that this was the better way to do it?
So, Don, great question. I was trained by the United States military, the Army standard interrogation techniques, very psychological, tested. But the old Army interrogation techniques were this mindset, and it's kind of what you see in typical sales, where you're going to build some level of rapport, kind of make this person think that you care about them. And then we're going to get that person to open up enough to share some of their needs, their fears. And then we are going to convince them with conviction and authority that we know exactly the problem they have, and we are the one that's going to solve that problem for them. And it does not work. It may work occasionally, and I'm going to give you some quick statistics since 9/11 until now. Using those old Army interrogation techniques, prisoners cooperate 4% of the time.
Wow.
I don't think that's success in any matrix. But if you think what you're asking someone to do on the battlefield in a prison, you're asking them to give up their most valuable resource, which is their information. That's all. It's the only cards they're holding. To give that up and expect you to then see them in some value, you've taken that value from them. Why on earth would they do that? And they don't. They may give you just enough to appear to be cooperating, but they don't tell you everything they know. And when you're hunting down high value targets, any information they know is fact. It's based on past information. I've got to gain a level of trust for these prisoners go, I know what the past was, but Eric, I need to help speculate the future because I've been in this prison. How do I know where these bad guys are moving? I have to build a level of trust where these prisoners go, based on what I know, Eric, here's where I believe they're going to be now. You cannot get that using the old techniques.
So how did you start developing this new approach? And are you the only one who follows this? Did it start changing the way interrogations are now done? And kind of how has this evolved?
Okay, so I used the old techniques when I first got to Iraq, and I pretty quickly realized this doesn't work. I was on a Delta Force team, and they're operators. They're like really highly specialized, highly effective military special operations soldiers. I was the only interrogator. And I'm out in Saddam's hometown of Tikrit. I'm failing. So I had the benefit to be able to say, I don't know what to do, but I don't have a bunch of other interrogators and bosses saying, here's what you should do, stay with the process. So I was allowed to kind of use my natural entrepreneurial mind and go, I don't know what to do, but let's see. So really, Don, all I did initially was say, how long can I just keep these guys talking to me? And I started to notice when I'm having conversations, there are moments when they wanted to be transparent. They kind of did want to open up, and I kind of studied myself and said, they're more open with you, Eric, when you're putting your ego behind you and your goals and your agenda, and you actually just listen to them. But I didn't know what that meant. But I had the opportunity, I had the kind of freedom to say, what does it mean to listen? Oh my goodness, when you actually ask questions this way. So it was kind of my lab. And I started to go, oh my goodness, this comes down to exclusively removing your ego and trying to put yourself in their shoes. That's what I call empathy-based listening, seeking to understand the perspective of the individual. This led to the capture of Saddam Hussein. Like literally, my last interrogation was the one man who knew his location. I interrogated him, Don, in less than 2 hours. The one man that actually knew where Saddam was and that he trusted to never give up his location opens up and says, Eric, we got to go. We got to go right now. That night, December 13th, 2003, he took the Delta Force team I was with to the exact location of Saddam. Because of this, the government was fascinated. They loved it. I was pulled out of the Army. I became the first civilian interrogator for the Defense Intelligence Agency. They created a 30-person interrogation team. And they said, go teach this. Go teach this thing. So it was over the next 10 years that I was really able to end up doing now 2,700 interrogations, 8 deployments, and figure out how do I make this efficient and how do I create a process to where I can teach other people, because this is counterintuitive to the way we listen and the way we think that we build trust. There was a battle for me over the next 10 years to try to get the conventional military to adopt this process. It's very collaborative. We're releasing a ton of prisoners. We're trusting prisoners. So my success to get this implemented was through the special operations side of the military. And that's always going to be a challenge, right? Because there's the old way. And it's kind of they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. And so I sort of say, there's no Darth Vader and there's no Luke Skywalker.
So as you put yourself in their shoes, right, which is the kind of center of this empathy-based approach, and do you believe that when you put yourself in their shoes that you legitimately they'd be in a better position if they helped you and offered up everything they knew to you than if they didn't? Did they end up in a better situation?
100%. So I've done 2,700 interrogations. I promise right now, if 95% of those prisoners walk through the door right now, they'd come to me, give me a hug and say, Eric, you saved my life. And when you say better position, think about it. You're a prisoner. And again, I don't expect that many people on this call have been a prisoner in a war zone, captured by the United States military. If that ever happens, whatever your plan was, it has gone off the rail. Things are not going well for you, right? They're in a spot and I'm going to get them out of there. And I'm probably going to get them out of there in 4 days. So you think, wow, that's great. That's not really a prisoner's problem, Don. The prisoner's problem is not getting released. Prisoner's problem is getting released, and there are no ramifications against their family, themselves, their reputation for the information they gave up. So empathy-based listening I would work with the prisoner, gain their trust, and they would say, Eric, if I take you to these bad guys, they're going to know it was me. But if I really listen to understand the prisoner, they'll go, Eric, there's some bad guys across town, and they don't know I know where they live, and I know where they live. If you'll go capture them and go from their house immediately to the people that I do know house, everyone will think those people across town did it, and they won't know it was me. Now, to execute that plan, guess what I just got there, Dawn? I got people across town that are bad guys I did not know about. That's the empowerment of working and listening to a prisoner. Guess what that prisoner got? He gained the trust now of my military commanders who go, wow, this guy's helping us. We already have overcrowded prisons. So to release a prisoner is a goal. But I've got to convince U.S. commanders this he's helping us now. He's bringing in people we did not know. And when he gets released, he's not going to get killed, because the world out there doesn't think that he was involved in the information that led to the capture of any of the new bad guys.
I love it. So at the end of the day, as in terms of us as business owners or leaders, entrepreneurs, the whole goal of what we're providing in any product and any service that we offer is some hope or expectation, right, of a better future, right? Some sort of benefit that's going to improve their lives is what we're at the end of the day selling, that their life is going to be in some way a little bit better if they work with us, if they work with our company, than it is today. So how do you kind of tie that the application of this empathy-based approach into the world of entrepreneurs and the products and services we offer?
So I love that question, because we think we're improving somebody else's life. That's why they'll partner with us. Empathy-based listening says yes, but don't assume you know what the improvement is to them, right? Because the old Army technique said we'd bring in a prisoner, set them down, and go, convince them how bad Saddam was. Convince them that this new world, this new government in Iraq is going to be better. Convince them that the old regime was terrible. And the prisoner's sitting there going, am I going to see my 4-year-old son again? What's going to happen to my crops? And so we say, but this is bigger. This is Saddam. This is the United States fighting a war. And they're like, I'm a human. I got a couple of bills I need to pay. And so it says, wait, of course we want to solve their problem, and we want to bring our resources to solve their problem. But what is most important to this person right now? Because our big picture is nothing compared to their little picture.
I love it. So at what point would you say, do you consider that your approach is leveraging fear, right? They say, fear is a much greater motivator than the gain that comes from a decision, right? The fear of loss, the fear of missing out, that's what most people are really making the decisions on. So how do you think about your utilization of fear into your approach?
It's critically important. I mean, yes, there is fear, right? We can look at a business person, somebody who's considering partnering with somebody on the call, or a prisoner. There's fear, and then there's kind of gain, kind of upside, the good side of things. I think for me is that I've got to communicate clarity. And when I say communicate, I need them to trust me enough to talk about what that fear looks like, okay? What that gain looks like, So it's so real. And then the key is that I build the bridge to eliminate or avoid that fear through cooperation with me. And the clarity, the very clear steps to that gain, that benefit through cooperation with me. Because we can say, oh, look at this fear. If they don't think if they can't see it and taste it and see a path to it, then it doesn't matter that we can solve it. So it's that clarity. People say, you got to be very clear. You better be good with message. I said, no, they're the best communicators to themselves. Let them build that clarity of that fear. Let them understand that I'm the bridge to help them avoid it, to help get away from it. So I hope that answers your question, Don.
Yeah, it does. And so, I'd say, Eric, at least on my end, I can't speak for everybody else listening, but, I think you've convinced me on the power of, this empathy-based listening approach. But with as great as this sounds and as much success as you've had, when do you throw it away? When doesn't it work? When do you have to revert back to the old school approach? When do you need to just pull out the hammer? When does this not work?
I don't pull out the hammer. I just don't. But I hope you understand, you got to see what my mission is. Okay. So when we talk about old school approach, so we can have interrogations. We can talk about that. But I spend a ton of my time teaching, training, and implementing negotiations. Okay, so there is old school hammer negotiation approaches, right? But when it comes to interrogations, we have to understand we're fighting a war, and the only thing that matters in war is information and its impact on the society. I mean, you think about it. Yeah, the United States military, and whether we go into Iraq or Afghanistan or parts of Syria or Libya or wherever, we've got to win over the people. And it's kind of what they call hearts and minds. So I'm going to do my best to communicate to this prisoner. I'm going to help you. And where my failures happen is when I have a prisoner who's just not a decision maker. I mean, ultimately, cooperation from a prisoner, it requires a decision. Am I going to trust this individual? It's a partnership. Am I going to give them those resources? And decisions are made by leaders. And if I have a prisoner who just doesn't have any leadership ability whatsoever, I can't get that commitment because they're looking at me going, go talk to my boss. This is above my pay grade, right? But even if I can't get that commitment, that cooperation, if I was to lay down the hammer, right? You can visualize that, whether it's physically, torture, mentally, that information spreads, information spreading. That builds a reputation, that builds a culture. And I always say for every prisoner that was tortured in Iraq, we created 5 enemy, and every prisoner that was tortured in Afghanistan, we created 10 because it had such an impact on their culture in Afghanistan. And I'm like, big picture, there's never a moment when that's worth it. It's like kind of having that integrity in business. We have to draw the line on that integrity, and the higher we can draw it, that kind of sets a principle, and that builds on itself farther down the line. Now, negotiations, there is a difference. I mean, there are certain times when this is kind of that fixed pie negotiation, and we are just figuring out how to cut it. And we're not looking to increase or build on the relationship as it moves forward. And at that time, we're going to use all sorts of psychological mechanisms to, as you say, lay down the hammer in a negotiation, right? And that comes in different forms. We can jump into that as well. I hope that answers your question, at least so far.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd love to get into. So let's say, we have a lot of entrepreneurs on here, and they're, and many real estate operators and developers and so forth. So let's say we're buying a property, right? We're negotiating to buy something, or say we're negotiating trying to sell our product to somebody. And there's that, like that analogy you use, that fixed pie approach where, I pay more and you get less, or, you pay more for my product, or, it's just looked as, one side is getting more than the other. There's only, it's a finite kind of pie, as you said. So how does this approach apply there? What are the other strategies, if any, that you use besides, your empathy-based listening approach?
I think really it's in preparation. And you hear a expert negotiators say, "Are you prepared?" I think the problem is a lot of people going to a negotiation, they don't know how to prepare, right?
Yeah.
And it's first thing we have to do is, where's the leverage? Who's got more power over whom? It's not the poker face. It's not how well you can play your side and hold your cards close to the vest. It comes down to leverage. Do you understand the leverage points, right? And can we manipulate those or maneuver those so that whatever they have leverage on you, we can reduce that? And can we identify the leverage points you have on the other individual? And can we increase those, emphasize those? Now, how do we communicate to scare them on the leverage points? And then most importantly, I need to unpluck, right? It's like something stuck to you is a leverage point. I need to get you clear of that, right? And I always say we got to be like water. They just can't grab you. We can go any direction in a negotiation. That doesn't mean can I walk away or do listen, you showed up to the negotiation, you want the asset, right? I mean, you want the deal. Let's not fake the funk here on what we're trying to get accomplished. You're a player. You're in on this. But whether it's long-term, whether it's short, the way we pay, high, low, partnerships, all these things, I need you to be flexible in every way. That reduces their leverage points against you, right? So I'm going to make it an easy one, right? So I deal with a lot of divorce negotiations, right? And many times I deal with the side of the couple that wasn't in the business world, doesn't have a lot of assets. They don't have a lawyer team, right? And I'm dealing with somebody who doesn't have a lot of control. Many times they're the person that takes care of the children. And I'm like, that's their strongest leverage point. They're going to go after the children. They're going to scare you to the point to where one of the spouse who has care of the children says, don't take my children. And then they're going to grab all this other stuff and say, okay, you can keep the kids. And I'm like, that's a leverage point. Now, what does that mean? I want you to stop loving your kids, give them up? No, I just need you to be aware. We're not going to let us get overexposed on this leverage point, right? And if you look at negotiations, do we understand all the leverage points? Do we understand how to minimize those? And then we can get into the fun side of controlling the communication. Because the biggest problem people making mistakes about negotiation, they talk too much. They push too much information. They have an agenda. They want to have control. And I say, you got to give up control to gain the power.
I love it. So yeah, one of the things that I've taught salespeople for years is the diary of the mouth, right? And when you're in a face-to-face or phone conversation, to ask open-ended questions and just be quiet, right? So say, what price I started my career as a real estate agent, right? And it was, what price do you think the seller would really take? And they say, oh, I don't know. You just sit there quietly, right? Or I think we're listed at the right price. Oh, really? Is that your opinion? And just let it open, right? And the more you're willing to be quiet, the more they'll tell you, well, maybe, So question there. And I love that approach. So, love any insights you want to share more on kind of being quiet, not talking too much. And that's what, the importance of listening. But how does this change in today's world of maybe, having to do negotiation, not face to face, or maybe even not over the phone, or maybe now using Zoom to do negotiation, or sometimes, having to do it via written communication? How does the approach change with various forms of communication, and how do you kind of adjust the negotiation strategy?
So great question. And it really, I'm going to argue if we're doing a real negotiation where they mentally, psychologically really do come to the table, if it's on a Zoom call, we can get that really close to working in proximity in real time. We can. Sure. You start dealing with written communications, it's just a different dynamic. I mean, you're really going to have to use time. You're going to have to use silence, those sort of things. So I would just say, remember these Zoom calls, we have to know how to use the camera. We've got to understand they're watching everything, every movement. We have to control that. right? I mean, my big thing in a negotiation is I like to come in as though I'm really got a game plan here. I'm squared away. Let them find out I was the guy that found Saddam and I'm working with this party and I'm leading. And then somewhere pretty quickly, I want them to kind of knock me off, kind of rattle me, right? Kind of throw away game plan number one, get me shaking. They say, we got to shake them up a little bit. I love giving that perception. Well, they're looking for it. They're looking for the eye flickers and the things. Play to it. This is all it's a lack of transparency. Two individuals trying to figure out a partnership, and there's not enough trust where you can be transparent. There's definitely greed and greediness involved. So understand what game we're playing. But also realize they're not listening much to what you're saying other than counter it, but they're watching every single move. Play to it. They're going to come at you with the strategy. Let them feel like they're manipulating you towards that strategy. Build your angle, suck them in, and it's kind of like jujitsu, right? And hit them around the back end.
So obviously here for anybody who's watching us here, I know many are just listening here on podcasts, you can tell, you're very focused in this interaction, right? You use your hands a lot. They say, less than 30% of communication is verbal, right? So tell us, what are the other, besides, they're watching all the time. It's a phenomenal tip. What other tips do you have? What are the other tools you use in negotiation? Are you a person who, likes to pull out the notepad and take notes and write things down and show you're attentively listening? What are the kind of the tricks you found or tips to better positioning, knowing that much more is coming from communication from what you're not saying, right? And what you're displaying than what you're saying verbally?
Okay, so let me try to give a strategy and see if it falls into there, right, Don? So if we think about two parties in a negotiation, typically both are going to have a strategy. And let's say I'm over here and this group in a negotiation, they're going to come at me with some information. They're going to do a lot of the talking, right? They're going to try to gain that control. What I want to do is I want to listen for what matters to them. Where are they trying to take me? They're trying to scare me in a direction. And I want to absolutely get absorbed into their strategy. It's kind of like I want to walk off my stage, my plan, walk off my stage and get sucked into theirs. Because when somebody feels like they're in a plan, one thing they want to do is they want to stick to the plan. I want them to believe we got him where we want him, because now the receptors are down. They're like, I know what's going on, and they look to the execution of that plan, right? So now all I'm doing is listening for, okay, where do they want to go? Go with them. Follow. And I want to get them really excited and close and eager, because they're going to put their guard down. They're going on the offensive. They're going to be aggressive. And it's a great way to kind of be that Trojan horse, right? But when you say it's nonverbal, it's hand movement, I'm listening to the words. I'm going to get so much more out of the words they use, the words they don't use, the adjectives they use, what I call the breadcrumbs. The nonverbal's fine. That's like second level. We got to get to deepest level. It's in their words.
So awesome, Eric. This has been phenomenal. So as you know, we have a lot of listeners here who are mixed. We have a big group of entrepreneurs, those focused on scaling, incredible businesses here listening in. And, I'd love to kind of turn it to you here for what's the final takeaway. I know we hit on a lot of things and you instilled quite some nuggets here for us all today, but what's the kind of final note message you want to leave here with our listeners?
Where we're going through massive amounts of change. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. You look at the way the world was 20 years ago and the way it was now. Well, we're still accelerating into change. So change, it's unknown. It can be scary. I need us to embrace the change. I need us to embrace the fear. I need the words, this is the way it's always been done before, to leave the building, right? Like the mindset should be, everything we've worked to get to today is fantastic. We may have to completely pivot, flip the script tomorrow. But when we do, we're going to do it the best way. Best way, we're willing to discover. We're excited to get better. We may have to change completely our direction, right? Like, oh no, we've always done it this way. Change is occurring. That doesn't mean I know tomorrow in the next 10 years are. It just appears like we're really going through some unknown, some change. Just don't try to hold on to the way we've always done it too long and go, it's going to be different. Get ready. I don't know what's coming through that door. But whatever it is, if we know it's different, we will be more prepared.
Awesome. Well, Eric, it's been truly a pleasure. I can't wait to have you at our lead event here shortly and get a chance to spend some more time with you. It's been truly awesome. So, Eric, what's the best way from here? We got business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders. Sounds like you even help people going through divorce. Hopefully, we don't have anybody with that challenge here today, but how can people get in touch with you to learn more and to reach out to you and continue their path of growth?
Right. If you want to connect, you want to learn more about empathy-based listening, if you need help with negotiations, just hit me up on email. Eric@ericmaddox.com. Right? It's super simple. You can go to my website, ericmaddox.com. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And that's Eric, ERICMADDOX.com.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, great. And a number of you will get a chance to meet Eric again at our event in Asheville here. And thank you so much, Eric. Truly a pleasure. Appreciate all the time you gave to us here today.
Thank you, Don.
This has been Don Wenner on the Impact Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. You can check out our other episodes by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, or check us out online by going to impactwithdon.com. I encourage and challenge you to make an impact.